To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll need a motion to adopt the agenda as indicated. The order of business is a climate action plan discussion, night farm accessibility project. And there are several documents which goes along with that. So we really need a motion to approve the agenda as indicated or to modify.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
So we'll go forward with the climate action plan discussion.
Good evening, Commissioners. So the purpose of this workshop is to allow an opportunity for the board to advise staff on how we would like to proceed with the climate action plan, and then also staff policy, like if there's any kind of actions or items that you would like to see included in the plan, or areas of focus that you want staff to target. So we want to make sure that as we develop the plan, we're bringing you what you want to see.
So anyone wants to begin the discussion on that?
Is there a presentation?
No
Oh,
presentation.
boy. Okay. I should have asked for an agenda then.
I was advised to let the board guide.
Yes, very much kind of like a budget scoping meeting. We just want to hear your initial thoughts and then we'll take it from there.
So I am going to go that way, I can type easier.
All right, thank you.
Wow.
Commissioner?
I really want to hear from the board. I think I've started 4 times now. I've put out draft policies. Yeah, so I'll just sit and listen for a little bit.
You can still start though, even and repeat what you had said. That's fine.
Thank you very much. I'm not ready for that,
Okay,
but I can get ready while I listen.
okay, okay. Thank you.
I'm sort of in the same boat that I was before. I don't know what I don't know, and I thought we were gonna have people talk to us and we were gonna ask questions, and it was gonna be somewhat interactive. I was not prepared for this either.
I'm the same way. I know that we had a budget plan presented to us at one point, and I would love to pick it apart with the guidance. Was it with Triangle J or not? Yeah. Okay.
I guess I'm prepared too, because I was understanding we had a presentation, so.
So what we can do is we have a presentation we have from the CAP itself, so we can present that to you and maybe that will create some engagement.
It would help.
we're waiting on that. Some additional things that we did start back and talk to that we're kind of working on. Now, this is just general stuff that staff is doing. This isn't particular to this, but I think it rolls in. We have been putting together some legislative goals for our representatives in Raleigh. One of those is something that Kent and I have been talking about with regards to stormwater. The state kind of restricts us at this point to like a 10-year storm event for stormwater devices. And then looking at how we could possibly get that up to 25. Now, I have heard examples, and Kent had this when he worked in Apex, where you could include a 25-year storm device in conditional rezonings, but which we've seen a lot of, but that isn't going to be every single case. So that is, we have put together some language for Robert Reeves and Senator Murdoch to look at to how we can better allow municipalities and counties for that matter, to have some more control over stormwater.
Can you describe, Mr. Franklin, the difference between a 10 and a 25-year storm plan? Is it engineering?
I think it's the size of
Overall sense.
probably size, and Kent could probably better point to that. I don't, all I know is our 10-year storms are probably looking more like 25-year storms when all of this was created many, many years ago. So
Well, my concern is with the with the development coming and the lack of permeable surface area, or at least diminished surface area. A 25-year plan, I'm assuming is going to be recommended by the staff. Is that correct?
that's what we currently have in there.
Yeah, the thing with that is we will still be limited to the first inch or inch and a half of water quality treatment. So the 25-year storm will be for the flood control portion of the STM.
So then you're focused on Park Drive, that area, Oakwood Drive, that,
This is just in general.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yes, if this is successful and a future development came in that area,
It would
yes,
mitigate.
it would be subject to those
Okay.
conditions.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah, and we have been working also to get our energy mix from Duke for what we're provided. So one would think with the nuclear plant right down the road that most of our power comes from that plant. We're trying to get some more information. I've been on phone tag with the Duke rep today, trying to get to see if there's a better analysis of Pittsburgh proper, or at least Chatham County. But all that we have right now is just this kind of Duke, Carolina. But we still have coal in our mix. So coal, natural gas is about equal. Nuclear is about 50% of that. A little bit of solar, a little bit of alternative. So I think that's a good consideration too, as we're putting this together on what our focus is, because where we get our energy from probably should kind of skew what our focus is on. For example, if 90% of our energy were from nuclear power, EVs might be a better alternative from because you're getting clean energy. If you're not getting clean energy, then you probably want to focus on building efficiency or energy efficiency measures. So we are working on that. Obviously, we've got a lot of building projects in the mix. So buildings can be a point of focus. And we are putting together some EV grants. So that's just stuff we're working on now generally from a staff perspective that came before, this plan. So.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin.
So this first slide is plans in the area and some of the ones that we're reviewing for ideas and examples of how we want to tailor our plan to fit our region. Chatham County is working on I don't remember if it ended up being a climate action plan, but I have a meeting with their lead staff member because whatever we produce, we want to make sure that it does complement what they're working on right now. Their stuff is still in draft forms at this moment. So that meeting should be happening sometime in March. So these are some of the benefits to a climate action plan. Some of this is material that Central Pines presented back in, I think it was December. So this is kind of a refresher to that. And so the parts that we keep driving on is that we want to make sure that we tailor this to fit the town of Pittsboro now and as we grow, and that we want clarify direction for management and staff. Slide, thank you. So these are some of the reasons why it's beneficial to do a cap. And where everything kind of comes together is that you get to do good for the environment, good for social equity, and some of the stuff in the long term end up being cost savings. So it's kind of like a win-win-win. So with the social equity, one of the pieces that we're working on is getting more of a busing system, which was the trolley that's in the works.
Yeah, circulation route.
Yes, so there's that, and then working on the connectivity to make downtown walkable, and so that way people have equitable access and obviously less cars on the road, reduce emissions. And then, so some of the ideas that we were looking at so far is like a vehicle. This is more of the town policy is looking at like a vehicle purchasing policy is an option. There's thoughts. We can go back to the next slide. So these were questions that we hope to get answered. Specifically, what's the vision? As far as who the primary audience goes, we assume that the primary audience is the town, and this is going to be a plan that staff follows, so the audience. And then with how will the community be involved, number 4. So right now, the plan is to have 2 to 3, so like at the Egg Fest that the county has, we'll have a table up to engage with citizens. So we plan on having 2 to 3, and that's just kind of based on the input that we receive. We will tailor that as needed, and then we'll bring progress updates to the board. This, I'll probably, once I finish going through, go back to this one to leave up as kind of like a.
Okay.
And then, so the next 4 or 5 slides kind of break down each question and to like focus in on, so this one is, what is the document trying to accomplish? Which I guess we could actually, this is for the board. If you would like, we can like answer this question and then resume the presentation. If you would like to go all the way through the slides to allow more time for thought, I'm here to help you.
I would love just to talk about our vision, the 5 of us. And what our priorities should be. I think that's a good place to start. Thank you.
So Commissioner Foley, do you want to start with what you think division should be?
Can you put it back on the screen? Thanks. Commissioner Bonnet, can you help with some definitions or attempted net zero, for instance?
Definitions, sure. So net zero would be buildings or systems or communities that are, on the whole, produce fewer emissions than they either offset or generate through renewable energy, energy efficiency, clean power. Yeah.
That's definitely a goal. Yeah. And how the communities around us, perhaps you can help us with some successes.
Yeah, so I will go back to the memo. Let me pull that up and I can tell you about what other communities have done. Here we go. So did a lot of research on this and looked into communities our size and the size that we are likely to grow to. And in the 5,000 population range, there really aren't very many data points. But I did find Edmundston, Maryland, which had adopted a green streets plan to reduce stormwater runoff and increase tree canopy. Brevard, North Carolina is 7,600 population. And their comprehensive land use plan incorporates climate resiliency considerations and focuses on reducing the vulnerability to flooding, which is interesting
Ironic.
because they saw it coming.
Yeah.
The town of South Miami, Florida is 12,000, population of 12,000. And they adopted a solar powered home ordinance requiring that new homes have solar panels. I don't think we need to go that far. The town of Davidson, North Carolina is just about 13,000. And they adopted a climate action plan that addresses climate change and promotes greener practices. The town of Boone, North Carolina, population 19,000. Their climate action plan aims to reduce carbon emissions and promote renewable energy. Scarborough has a comprehensive climate action plan that focuses on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So I could go on. I mean, there's a list of
Appreciate that.
20 communities, but we're certainly, we have peers who are taking action very clearly.
I'm just going to throw this out. I see our community as a residential community as opposed to an industrial, commercial type community. And I feel that whatever we decide to do, it should be to protect the citizens from climate issues that would mainly target residences as opposed to industrial. Is that maybe we should shape our approach in that direction?
Yeah, I appreciate that point. And I think it raises the observation that we have before us a choice of creating a policy that is just about town operations or about how we want to grow as a community. So some communities do just that. They only focus on the police fleet, the public works fleet, the municipally owned buildings, so on and so forth. I think given that we already have plans in place to grow very dramatically, I think that would be a missed opportunity. And I hear from folks that they want action and policies that will guide the whole community. So.
Perhaps you can share some experience about runoff and how it affects our streams and our rivers.
Yeah, thank you. You know, a bunch of us remember in 2018 that August flood was 4 3/4, almost 5 inches in 45 minutes. You know, a really severe storm is 5 inches in a day. That was an absolutely extraordinary event. And I don't know where it fits in like 10-year, 25-year, 100-year flood events, but we lost the culvert on Pittsburgh Elementary School Road. And I think none of us have a crystal ball about the future, but all of the climatologists, including the North Carolina climatologists, are telling us that we're going to have more and more severe sudden weather events. So intense rainfalls, and the rainfalls are becoming more intense for reasons that physicists can explain, and I could probably begin to answer that question in layman's language, but
So for our particular town, can we speak just a bit about how we are monitoring? This is a staff question. How we're monitoring the runoff when we knock down trees for a development. I know we have staff that monitors that. Is that correct? No. Kent, do you want to take that one?
So I think the primary way is the UDO. So the UDO, chapter 4 talks about our stormwater policies and our stormwater ordinance. So the post runoff rate and the pre-runoff rate have to match. So the post runoff rate cannot exceed the pre, and that's where this 1 in 10, 1 in 25-year storm events come into play. There are stormwater discharge permits that are required for the development to demonstrate that they are meeting those thresholds. That's reviewed by staff, including the calculations, the analysis. And then there's detailed plans for the stormwater devices that are installed initially as sedimentation devices. Then they're later converted to the stormwater control devices. So that's how the, I guess, hydraulic part of it is managed. It may not be all of your question. I know you talked about the
Good part.
the vegetation, the forest, those type of things. So, but as far as the hydraulic, that's the way that's done.
Understood. But do we have staff that's monitoring runoff?
Not per se.
Is that a county responsibility?
The county monitors and regulates the sedimentation, the post-construction program for things like silt fences, sedimentation devices, diversion ditches, those type.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Jackson.
Sorry.
leadership.
In the process, I'll just give you a general overview. Process of looking at the Pittsburgh vision for CAP, basically. So what is supposed to be going on is a general discussion about what the vision is for Pittsburgh. So we're beginning with that. Mr. Jackson just talked about the stormwater, which basically we do have, that's covered in the UDO. So basically in reference to that, as that can be part of our vision there, to incorporate that into this climate policy or plan. So and John, I think you had some more questions.
Just directional questions, where we want to go as a board. We kind of expected to be had to have a presentation today, so we're scrambling, but I think we're kind of, this is good because we get to understand and give it a little bit of give and take from all 5 of us, what we want to see, how we can protect our citizens from flooding and from any type of the other thing is net zero, making sure that everything is everything that we can do possibly to make our town net zero when it comes to electric or no, I guess it's carbon. Yep.
Greenhouse gases in general.
That's where we are.
So, as I recall, staff, I think that Central Pines Regional Council's presentation from months or so ago was that it included some high level stuff about the nature of the problem, the major societal sources of greenhouse gases. is that in this same slide deck? Okay. Well, yeah, I really don't want this to be a John Bonnet's lecture section, but I think it is helpful to remind ourselves that in our society, and especially in North Carolina, the kind of neck and neck race in pollution emissions is between the power sector and transportation. So right now, transportation is ahead of power sector. So we produce more pollution from transportation than we do from generating electricity to power our houses and such. But it really is a neck and neck race. I mean, it's from year to year, it changes. It has tended to be that transportation is advancing over electricity emissions. In North Carolina, we've been making good headway. As Mr. Franklin pointed out, our composition, the recipe of fuel sources that comprise what we get when we plug something in, it used to come mostly from coal, and now it is mostly gas, quite a lot of nuclear, which is clean, and coal is a shrinking resource. Solar and wind are advancing very rapidly because right now they are the cheapest source of electricity at utility scale, cheapest to build, and so that's promising. I think economics are on our side, and we're seeing something similar with transportation, in that the cost per mile of transportation in an electric car is cheaper than the cost per mile in a gasoline car. Now that's just the fuel cost, right? That's not an all-in cost. When we think about the total cost of ownership of vehicles, it really depends on the individual vehicle. There are some EVs that are at price parity with gasoline vehicles. The F-150 Lightning pickup truck is $6,000 cheaper than the precisely equivalent gasoline truck. If you wanted to get a gasoline F-150, you've basically got to pay $6,000 more for the expanded cab. You've got to add 2 more drive wheels. I mean, that's a 4-wheel drive as opposed to the all-wheel drive in the EV. You've got to go to the 6-cylinder engine. So all in, it's a more expensive truck to buy the F-150 Lightning, excuse me, the F-150 gasoline truck versus the F-150 Lightning, which is all electric. So, you know, it's all over the board right now. The market is changing. But it's clear that there's some economical opportunities in new vehicles where electric is cheaper than gas. And it's for reasons like this and the complexity of all of these decisions that I really don't want to get into the individual prescriptions. I think that it's not wise for us as a governing board to say, staff, we want you to buy a whole bunch of solar panels and put them on the roof. Instead, I think we do need to have some vision, some higher overarching ideas for how we should guide our staff in directing their own research and their scrutiny of the opportunities and the challenges. So I'll offer something, and if I may, I don't want to dominate. If other people want to respond to what I've just said, please.
It makes sense.
And do you mind if I provide your mix real quick? Generation mix?
Please.
Sure. Yeah. This would have been in some form to you already, but this took a long time to get. I actually had to call Electric Cities in North Carolina to get Duke's energy mix. Hydro is 1.3, biomass is 0.2%, natural gas is 30.2%, solar is 1.8, coal is 10.8, and nuclear is 54.3%. So of that, 5% of all that is renewable, and then total 59.3% is carbon free. That gives you an idea of that mix.
That's Pittsburgh specific.
That I have not been able to get yet. Lake Foam Tag.
Yeah, we won't.
Duke. I think they could probably get us something a little better, but this is 2023 numbers. I couldn't get 24 numbers. It's wildly how difficult this has been just to get that. So.
Jonathan, could you run that down again from the largest to the smallest?
Yes, sir. Nuclear, 54.3. Natural gas, 30.2%. Coal, 10.8. Actually, kind of surprised it's still that high.
It's cheap.
Hydro, 1.3. Solar was 1.8. Apologies there. Other was 1.3. And that's probably some renewable regs, I'd imagine. And then biomass is 0.2.
Thank you.
Yeah, 5% of that's renewable and 59.3% of that is carbon free. But my contact at Electricities is trying to work to get the 24 numbers. But when I get that, I can get it changed.
So, what I would suggest is that I'll just express it as my vision. It's a personal vision that because we stand at a pivotal moment in our history and our growth, as we grow from a small town to a thriving community, we have the power and the responsibility to shape a future that is sustainable, resilient, and financially sound. Our clear vision should be that a town that grows smartly, prioritizes people over sprawl, protects our natural resources, and builds infrastructure that serves both current and future generations without placing undue burdens on them. I would suggest that we champion compact, walkable, and transit-oriented development that shortens trips, reduces emissions, and keeps costs in check. We will preserve green spaces and invest in clean energy. We will ensure that our town remains not just livable, but a model for sustainability. Our streets will be designed for people first, walkers, bikers, and transit riders, so that Pittsburgh remains a place where mobility is safe, affordable, and accessible. Above all, our commitment is to smart, financially reasonable, financially responsible climate action. Policies that protect our economy while securing a cleaner, healthier future. So.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's good.
Right.
And my kind of thoughts around this specifically for Pittsburgh is focus on the action for one, and that it's a actionable plan that we can take on, but also like in the context of other plans. I think Chatham County is working on one and the Central Pines. And, my vision would be that as we get down to our level, that it's very actionable things. And I think you mentioned before about like data collection is difficult or impossible probably at our level. And so let the counties and the regional governments and those things do those studies for us essentially and utilize that state and federal, not to go to that level, but and make ours a really action-oriented plan that is in scale with our town. And I think, probability of getting grants to fund these things. And then I think we should also probably highlight some that, like when you mentioned pedestrian-oriented transit, that might be a harder request of DOT than it should be, but kind of categorize these things of like, what's in our sphere of control, UDO, et cetera, zonings, and then what is in a sphere that we may want to push on to try and change DOT regulations or things like that, there might be those higher level plans.
Yeah.
But, I'd like to, and I think it'd be important too, to, highlight what we've already done in things, these are what we've done in the past. And then these are sort of like best in class that we'd be working towards in terms of stormwater, like I know you've mentioned recently, Ken, and those type of things, but where it's really, I've reviewed a lot of climate action plans that I feel like are light on the action plan, and heavier on text. And so, I'd like to see that for us, but I don't know exactly what it looks like or what the model is for that. But, we clearly say, this is a good move in this direction. It makes financial sense and, just makes our community better.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Mayorship. I definitely agree with you, and especially you touched on DOT. I think there's plenty of opportunities like that where we, as a community or staff, can, I'll just be blunt, lobby. Because, if DOT continues as they have shown in their past, they tend to have kind of an inertia in the direction of paving for vehicles, rather than creating the kind of infrastructure that I think so many people in Pittsburgh really are hungry for. And there's other situations like we know that trees, older trees, give us shade and windbreak and cooling effects. That's science. It's scientifically proven. And yet we have a state legislature that's trying to pull back local government's ability to protect tree cover. So those are situations that concern me. And I do think I appreciate you recalling my emphasizing the point that baseline exercises. I'm ambivalent about this, really, because good management always wants to be able to measure its progress, right? And we want our manager and our staff to be able to look back and look at the benchmarks and see how far we've gone or how much further we have to push. But I just really want to emphasize, friends, that we are currently a community of 7,000 population. Is that the current estimate?
Yes, 6, just above 6.
Just above 6, but with some entitlements in the very near future to be 7 or 8 in the immediate next year.
Probably grow 1,000 to 1,200 people per year, easy. It's my guess.
And by my estimates, we have entitlements that are on record and bound in law to the extent that can be the case with municipal ordinances, for an additional 50 to 80,000 people. So we're going to grow 1,000%. And if we're going to grow 1,000%, really want to focus on what our pollution emissions are today, I think that that's not a good use of our time. I really think that what you said is right, Mayorship, that we need to support and pay attention to what the county is doing in terms of documentation of quantification of the greenhouse gas emissions and the baseline measurements. Turn to the Council of Governments, Central Pines Regional Council, for any guidance that they can give us on that baseline. But I think what's much more important is figuring out how we get from here to 60,000 people and how we shape the way that we do that growth. Yeah. So. Can I get an amen or anything?
Yeah, I was nodding the whole time, John.
Okay.
A couple of things I would like I would suggest that we as a board recognize what Central Pines is doing for us. They're our guiding force, and that's something we should acknowledge them and thank them for if that's possible. One of the things we haven't talked about is land preservation. And I want to make sure that that is part of our vision, land preservation, trees, making sure that that's a priority with us. Charging stations, I don't know if we have a plan for charging stations downtown, do we?
Actually, we recently we made an application about 2 weeks ago for a couple of stations. And we are making another application in a couple more weeks for an additional location. So both of those locations are in the vicinity of the circle. So
Wonderful.
those will be, they're out there. We're hopeful, of course. I was just gonna add just a couple thoughts based on your conversation so far. First of all, I think, the discussion that you've articulated has been great. I think especially Commissioner Bonnet's vision statement, very thoughtful. And I think the mayor's comments are also very important about thinking about what we've done, what we're doing, and how we can do more of it. You have invested in sidewalks tremendously in the last 2-3 years. That helps. You are always advocating for open space, for park programs. We've done a lot of work in water quality. I think all of those things that we've done in the past several years, if we were going back and creating the climate action awareness plan before that, might all be part of it. So that may be a way to think about, how to articulate or formulate your goals for this vision. I think if staff will take these sound bites and try to weave a vision statement in conjunction with Central Pines that we can then bring back to you to fine tune, react to. So that may be a decent goal for this evening. So.
Thank you.
And Kent, also, I would say that we would want to oversee the county's draft also.
They're probably 18 months away, maybe a year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they haven't really kicked theirs off. I don't think we're probably a couple months ahead.
Okay.
I think they're looking at theirs as more of a sustainability plan, is my understanding.
Yeah, the very next thing that's going to happen with staff is going to be to start the stakeholder survey process. And, we will in large part use, your thoughts, sound bites from this evening to kind of begin that process.
So when you say stakeholder, can you just expand on that?
Yeah, Jenna may actually be able to describe more how that conversation has gone with Central Pines, but certainly, residents of the town, business owners in the town, I think would, come to mind first of all.
And some more information about the county plan. Brian Thompson and I had actually talked about, was there a possibility to join forces, if you will, and do something at the same time? We are a little ahead of their schedule. Plus also we felt like the goals of the county plan would likely be somewhat different from the goals of our plan. So we kind of figured, let's just kind of run parallel and bounce ideas off each other as we go through.
As far as the stakeholder mapping and community engagement goes, there's quite a bit of data available about Chatham County. And so Chatham County is rural, large. We want to see how that compares to Pittsburgh. So that's where the stakeholder mapping goes hand in hand with the community engagement. And with the community engagement, it will be in-person events. And then I didn't mention earlier, but we will be sending out a survey. Central Pines does that regularly. And so they're prepared to help us with that.
Okay, wonderful. And that would be online through our website?
I I'm not entirely sure. I have to talk to our communications team a little bit, but I would want to try to put it out on social media. And I haven't participated in a survey with the town of Pittsburgh yet, so I'm not exactly sure what our policies are.
Yeah, it'll be on the website.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. The other initial action plan is per the proposal, an action item or an action team, but that will be maybe a couple of you all and department heads to figure out once we lean towards what these actionable items are, or how do we create actionable items that we know that staff can take care of.
So I also don't want to leave this meeting tonight without having really emphasized a point that I've tried to insert in every draft that I've offered. And I'll just read from it. It's the very first whereas statement. Whereas the town of Pittsburgh is committed to promoting a cleaner environment and reducing pollution while also being financially responsible. And we've had some side conversations, Mayor Shipp and myself, Commissioner Foley, Commissioner Vose, and I reflect back on must have been 5 or 6 years ago, a fellow named Chuck Marin from an organization called Strong Towns came to town and spoke. And he's a libertarian, a planner by profession, who has observed, and he's not the only one, there's a lot of evidence for this thing that he calls the suburban growth Ponzi scheme. So we all know what a Ponzi scheme is, right? It's where one crooked person convinces other people to invest, and then they convince other people to invest, and that first person runs off with the money. Basically, it means there's a pyramid of continual growth that has to happen. And unfortunately, sprawl is that kind of a scheme where in order to afford 20, 30 years after the sprawl gets built, in order to afford the replacements for the infrastructure, to repair the roads, to replace the rotting pipes, more growth has to happen. Whereas those cities that build much more densely get a higher per square foot amount of tax revenue that can actually pay for the replacement of the infrastructure. And so by building up rather than out, we're also being financially responsible. And it's kind of irrefutable. And I'd love to see people argue against it. But that's my understanding of it. And I haven't heard people present arguments against it that stand on financial ground.
Can we just pull that apart a little bit?
Please, please.
So right now, I think the only up vertical we have right now in Pittsburgh is apartments, rental apartments. And I haven't seen, I don't know if it's coming but I haven't seen any condominiums where there is actually owner-based apartments in the future. That's something we would like to encourage, I would think, downtown. Vertical home ownership. And right now, I don't think we have any, do we?
Mosaic has.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, one.
Mosaic's got both
Right above.
4 or 5, yeah.
Right, yeah.
You will see Mosaic North very soon, I think, in a couple of months. That's each side of the amphitheater there. That I believe is 5 or 6 stories. Apartments, I believe. So that'll probably be the tallest apartment building in Pittsburgh at the time. You've also got the 3-story townhomes going in
off of Grant Drive, next to UNC Medical. So they're doing the grading for that now. I think that'll kind of set the market for the townhomes in Pittsburgh, because I hear they're gonna be listed around $1 million. So when you start looking at 3-story townhomes at $1 million, that will set the market. And we're seeing more and more apartments. We've got an application in for apartments on Diane Street. Those are only 3-story though. If you look at, when you all approve Roads to Walk, 1,200 units on that 200 acres, it's pretty substantial. And most of those will probably be 4 to 5 stories.
I don't know, Habitat for Humanity is also thinking and that steering towards that, more dense,
Yes.
less.
What they have initially submitted is all townhomes, 54 units that'll likely that could possibly go to 64, 68. They're trying to develop the south side of that.
That's great.
So in a way, Commissioner Bonas, we are heading in that direction. We just need more.
To some extent, we are. We are certainly more than we've seen
Yes.
in our history.
And with the county's UDO, you'll likely need more dense growth to be driven to the towns.
Yeah, that's been a pretty clear statement from the county board and staff for years now. Ever since zoning was implemented. The other piece of this about it's not financially responsible, but with sensitivity to finances and the cost of living, I often say, and I don't think anybody here is going to refute me, that this board's top priority is affordable housing. I mean, we all hear it. We hear it from our friends and our family and our neighbors that there's not enough housing stock. The housing stock that is going up is too expensive. And people who live here can't afford to move, can't afford to upscale their house. If they're young, family just starting out, and retirees often can't afford to move and stay in the community. Affordability, a piece of affordability is what it costs to just live and to get around. And that's why I keep coming back again to striving to make our community more walkable, so that if in future someone decides they literally cannot afford to have a vehicle anymore, they can live without it. They can have a fulfilling life and a healthy life. And make do with other forms of transportation like transit or ride share or borrowing a car or walking and biking. So, yeah.
So just to layer on to that, so it might be, in a general sense, the staff might be looking to ways where the downtown area can become more dense, instead of thinking 2 stories or 3 stories. And what areas in downtown would be most appropriate for those, and then planning for that. The suggestion.
I guess largely in our UDO are already too, and especially Heights downtown and the land use plan with the downtown support areas.
We're also updating the downtown vision. An ongoing project.
With height.
No, it's not my project, but it is ongoing.
Any other thoughts or comments on this item?
Summary real quick.
Thank you. Apologies, we didn't have a spark to start the fire, but I think you all did a great job coming up with some stuff. So real quick, we've got priorities or wants, actionable items. I heard external and internal, so things that we can control internal and then things that we would like to push or lobby for externally. Flooding and stormwater, that's certainly going to continue to be an issue. We see that anytime it rains and you drive on Thompson Street. Walkability, obviously multi-use bike paths, sidewalks. I think dense communities are going to drive that walkability anyway. And then, of course, us making sure the staff level, as these developments come in, we're keeping things close to where the houses are, coffee shops, parks, grocery, yes. Net zero, I did have a question mark beside that. Are we thinking net zero for the town operations, or are we thinking net zero for the town as a whole? Because those are two very different things. So if we want to ponder that for a second, or I can revisit it. Tree coverage.
Just say this, how can we ponder our residents to net zero?
That's the difficult part. And so
Would this be new development or existing residents in the city limits? I mean,
one solution could be the town purchasing carbon credits on behalf of town residents. Now, obviously, that's going to drive your tax rate up. But just a quick thought, and mind you, my knowledge of a lot of this is very limited, but purchasing carbon credits is an option, but might be an expensive one.
I think in terms of net zero, it's a term that should be defined of what it means to us in terms of per building, per site, per source, what that is. Typically, I see it as energy. Net zero carbon is a more advanced concept, I think. And then I think too, as you mentioned, Jonathan, like there's a point in, building a building, in my experience, where if you have say LEED silver, it's returning that investment immediately with energy efficiency. And then past a certain point, it's a investment by that company or that building owner in the climate action of that building. And so I think that'd be an important decision point for us as a board, as it relates to taxes, of what we want that push to be, immediately recoverable, sustainability, or reaching out to things like taxes for carbon credits. And I think could be the difference between, a goal or I guess more like a vision statement or a goal. We're gonna, as a town, we're gonna build this, but we encourage people to do this, or as a town, we're gonna invest up to this level. So
certainly, net zero in town operations would be easier to accomplish in the short term. I don't know how difficult it would be, but it has to be easier than the other thing.
Yeah, but now when you say net zero for the town, is that, and this is really new for me, I'm telling you, is that meaning zero emissions for our transportation, our vehicles would be total electric?
No, I think when net zero come in, I mean, you can focus on electric, or you could say, all right, our emissions are this level, so we're going to offset that with buying people's tax credits or their carbon credits. Because there's a market for carbon credits. Because Al Gore used to say all the time that he was net zero. This was way back before it was even like a popular thing to say. But that's what he was doing. He was like buying credits from dumps and landfills that are producing methane or whatever. So there's a whole market for it. You obviously know more than I do about it, but am I relatively on the same page?
Yeah, you described it. And just, Commissioner Farrell, just to explain it, if you've got a landfill, which Chatham County does, we don't know its methane emissions, but methane is one of the most powerful greenhouse gases.
Yeah.
So when methane is released from a landfill, it has, 180 to 125, depending on how you now analyze it, 125 times more heat trapping effect than the same amount of carbon dioxide. And destroying that methane, just simply destroying it, burning it, brings that down to just the same greenhouse gas force of carbon dioxide. And so Al Gore and a lot of other people invest in a project to capture the methane from a landfill and flare it, or capture the gas, clean it up, and then turn it into electricity, which would be even better. And so he takes credit for the emissions reductions that he invested in. And that's how he gets to carbon neutrality.
So there are actually fire poles in the landfills and fire flares in landfills in Raleigh.
Mhm.
And you say, well, that's methane that's coming up through the ground, the trash that's been generated over the years.
It's also safer too, because there have been landfills that have.
So in addition to purchasing credits, there are other things. So some of my specific examples pertain to more beach communities, since that's where my study's focused. But in Wilmington, you could plant seagrass, and the seagrass would consume some of the emissions. And that was one way to offset. Obviously, that's not applicable here, but there's another example that, again, won't be applicable here. In areas that have large cattle productions, they actually looked at cattle release a lot of methane. And so they looked at backpacks for cows to absorb the methane, to stop it from going into the environment. It's very expensive. We don't have the cattle production in Pittsburgh, so it's not really applicable. But there are other options that staff can look into. And then going back to the net zero comment, since we don't want to establish a baseline right now, you can't really set net zero as a goal without knowing where you are. So that kind of goes back to what we were talking about, whereas keeping Central Pines, and I would advise keeping net zero as a goal in the vision statement, but not as like an actionable item at this time.
Yeah.
We can also include an action to 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, a year down the road, revisit our plan, see what the budget looks like, see how we're doing, and then bring in more of those specifics. And then another one that we advise to avoid, tied in with the net zero, is to set a goal. A lot of towns are like net zero 2040, net zero 2050, and that's not really applicable to Pittsburgh right now. So we're not saying don't do it. We're just want to make sure that that's not necessarily applicable to us at this moment.
Thank you.
Would we, I'm just asking, I'm not sure, would we put in our vision a percentage that we would like to be down to?
At this time, personally, I would recommend no,
Okay.
but I would be happy to report back on that as we dive into this project more.
I could say headed towards net zero, goal towards net or something, something like that.
Yes.
At this point.
Yes, definitely language to include, but as like the broader.
Then once we get some of that data, then we can say that that's what we're trying to look toward.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
And we can even make an action item by such date, we want to try to obtain some data. Or yes, so, and as grant funds are available, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, as a concept to head towards, that's absolutely what I would like to support. And Jenna, thank you so much for that comment, because I think that's exactly in line with my understanding of how the science is evolving. And who knows, with artificial intelligence, maybe these data problems are going to go away. But right now, 3 times Chatham County Climate Advisory Committee has hired or incentivized grad students to try and build these greenhouse gas emissions inventories. And each time, over 3 attempts, and they're in the midst of a 4th one right now, is my understanding, they have come up against just, brick walls with some of the data. Like Duke Energy can't give us really a solid number for Chatham County electric generating profile. It's hard enough on the state boundaries because transmission lines cross state boundaries, and we get electricity from Virginia, and we get electricity from South Carolina. So it is very challenging and very time consuming to try and set those baselines. And so I appreciate that you're hearing that and that you're acknowledging and thinking about how we can still set a policy and action plan to proceed or to follow that that contemplates an evolution in our understanding of the problem and the ways to measure the problem. So thank you.
So we had tree coverage. Certainly think that's important. We've even started talking with with DOT on how we could replant some existing DOT right of ways that have been cut and continue to be mowed. Certainly along 64, as my goal anyway, as you drive through 64, it still looks like you're in a rural area and not have apartments all up against it. So Kent and I are working on that now, actually. Investing in clean energy, that we probably need to get a little bit more detail on that, what that means and what you all would like to see with regards to that. Is that EV charging stations? Is that solar on the buildings? Is that making sure that our buildings are more efficient? I mean, and that could mean a myriad of things, but if you have specific things, that would be great to hear. Land preservation, EV chargers, and then downtown density. And I think a lot of these are fairly easy. Land preservation, I do have some concerns about. If there's some more detail about that, that would be helpful. Only because of how expensive land is now in Pittsburgh and Chatham County as a whole. Do we potentially look at purchasing land outside of our boundaries within general statute? Because there is a mile, if we're looking for development or economic development. But how do we do that and make it work financially? Anything I missed?
It hasn't been articulated yet, but I do want to add in there considerations about how do I articulate this? Extreme heat events is the concern, but how to express it. I think a community that cares for one another also plans for events that are unlikely but predictable to some extent, like extreme heat events. And if it coincides with a power outage, people could be in a world of hurt. And I know that the county has worked on this and has some efforts. The county health department, I believe they actually have a plan. I think they have an extreme heat plan. And whether it's that or extreme cold, I mean, I just think we need to be prepared for changing climate and maybe that is staff thinks about ways to use the community house as a cooling shelter, or we will collaborate with the county for this building as a cooling shelter. Again, I don't want to get into the weeds. I want to express the high level concern and state the vision that we as a community look after one another.
Yeah, I think for this particular project, getting in the weeds is just fine. This is new to most of us, certainly me. And some of the plans that I've seen, I want to say Davidson's is 100 and something pages. And so, I mean, we can either go that detail or something that's more broad. I mean, this could either be a 1-page vision or it could be a 150-page spelled out plan.
Yeah.
I feel like in our current growth and evolution as a town, a 150-page plan is not going to serve us well because we just don't have the resources to enact a lot of it. And it would probably sit on the shelf for quite a while. So something in the middle is hopefully is my goal. The last other thing that was mentioned was.
I think in terms of getting in the weeds, I agree with both of you in that I would like, staff to get in the weeds and make this a detailed actionable plan that then is presented to us that we comment on and avoid the weeds from here as much as you can.
Yep. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to put y'all to work a little bit.
That's what we have staff for.
That's right. That's right. And then past wins and accomplishments. And I think that's a good point to make, considering the number of EVs that we currently have, and then some of the other things that we've been able to do, adding those in there.
Can I add one thing? If and when we do build as a town facilities, that they are done in a manner that is admirable to what this plan would describe. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So any building that we want to be proud of it, that this is what we've done. This is a cutting edge type of building that we can show our neighbors how proud we are of it.
Yeah,
And I know that that's budget, but I think it's important,
yeah.
important statement.
But I'm sure our climate action plan will be enforced before we build.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point. But I'll echo that, Commissioner Foley, because I know that in North Carolina, the building lobby has persuaded the state legislature on a number of occasions to restrain the model building codes in North Carolina from improving and advancing at the rate that other states are advancing. Even immediately adjacent states have better, superior building codes in terms of efficiency of the structure of the house and what kinds of heating and yes, materials and what kind of heating and air systems we have. And I think we need to push back on that. And maybe it's not just in lobbying, but that we strive to build LEED silver. Mr. Franklin, you weren't here to hear me opining on this, but some time ago when we were talking about the incentive for the hotel that was built at Mosaic, we had lots of arguments about that, and I was pounding the table that the LEED certification system is not the only one around. And when I hear builders or developers say, oh, well, we can't do that because we don't want to pay for all that falderall, the plaque on the wall and whatnot. When you've got Energy Star certified buildings that are very low incremental cost and you generate tremendous energy savings. So what I said at that time, and I'll repeat it today, is it just needs to be a third-party verification of energy savings. Not necessarily LEED, not necessarily Energy Star, but something where learned folks, building scientists come in and examine the whole building and say, yeah, you're going to likely get this level of dollar savings from those energy implementations, that kind of stuff. So forgive me for getting in the weeds because I will get in the weeds because I happen to know a little bit about it.
Yeah, and even
High rates.
Thank you.
Yeah, even with our public works remodel, we're looking at making that building, even a metal building at Public Works, as energy efficient as we can. So
It just makes sense.
Yeah.
It just makes sense.
the good news is a lot of this stuff we're already doing. It's just kind of putting it in an actionable plan where we can check the box and keep adding to what we're doing.
And I think highlighting what we've already done is it grounds the plan a little bit and gives it more possibility, I guess, and that if we came out with a plan and we said we would like to do all of this stuff, but we haven't done anything yet, it seems unlikely. But if we say we've done this and these developers have agreed to this and this and this and this, then it's a build on that and it seems more able to be accomplished. So.
Agreed.
Cool. Yeah, because we got 4 more hybrids getting outfitted right now.
Hey, terrific.
So
Good. So to echo another point that Commissioner Foley you made was on land acquisition. I think that serves 2 interests. It's not just about buying open space or parkland or conservation land, but it's also about making investments for affordable housing. And so I think there's multiple goals that can be served through focusing on at some time in the future, making investments in land.
gotcha. And considering the board that you all are and the community that we are, I think it goes without saying that we want this plan to have some type of equity focus, right, across the entire community, not just in certain areas.
Yes.
That had not been mentioned, but
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, up next, we have a This action item for a Night Farm Community Park Accessibility Project. This you, Jonathan?
This is more talk than I've done in 2 years I've been here. So we were made aware of a grant from our mayor, who stays on top of almost everything. So we had 2 weeks to put it together, so all hands on deck. This is it's a piece of Part F. It's the same group that approves Part F will approve this, but it's focused on accessibility of existing parks or parks that someone wants to build. Top end is $500,000 plus a 20% match. So top end project would be 600. We don't have all of the pricing together yet, but we think this project's going to be somewhere between 250 and 300,000. So that would put our match at 50 to 60,000. I would like to actually bump that up to like a 30% match to increase our probability of getting awarded. So that'd be 90 to 75, somewhere in there. So we're just looking at Night Farm Park. For this one, we have made improvements to almost all of our parks over the last year and a half. Several $100,000 at Rock Ridge, new playground, paved the driveway. We've made some few minor upgrades at Town Lake. Much more to go though. Kiwanis has seen a decent amount of investment with new playground, pour in place, and we've got some money in this current budget to replace the fencing around that because that needs to be done. Of course, we built a pop-up park.
Mary Hayes.
Mary Hayes, we just put the bathrooms in. And then McClenahan, which has seen the most investment in the last couple of years with the skate park, tennis courts, basketball courts, and then of course accepting the baseball field from the county. I'd encourage you to drop by that too. East Chatham Little League is doing a lot of work out there at their own dime, so we greatly
I
appreciate it.
understand that Commissioner Farrell has agreed to change all the light bulbs at the top there.
Maybe while they're on the ground.
I think he's the full-time maintenance person at McClenahan at the moment. So we should see new lights going up, I think in March or almost in March. So I think in March, they're supposed to start construction on that. And Jay raised a lot of the money to make that project happen. So really Night Farm is kind of the park that we haven't put a whole lot of money into in terms of improving it because it's brand new. We are going to be moving the dog park off the ski slope over to the flat part. That's supposed to happen in the next couple of weeks. We got a grant from Chatham County. Chatham Park is throwing in 4,000 to bridge the gap because we just didn't have the money. So hopefully that'll take place here in a couple of weeks. So we're looking to take the existing 3 playgrounds. There are 4 playgrounds. One of those playgrounds, when the consultant looked at it, said it wouldn't work for pour in place. So we're going to leave it as is with triple shredded mulch. But the other 3, we just want to go in and do pour in place. They were originally set up for pour in place, and then I think the budget just got too high and it didn't get done. So go ahead.
Excuse me, but can you describe what pour in place is for?
You go to the last slide. So some of the comments that we've gotten is don't make it a dark color because it'll be too hot. So we are going to go a light color. It is our goal in the future to try to put shade structures over a lot of our play areas just to continue. And actually, that's probably a good thing for climate action.
Yeah, any shade that we can incorporate in this would be good too. I don't know if that's justifiable as an accessibility item.
It isn't. The other part of this, so the pour in place is about $203,000 and some change. And then we're looking at about 5 or 6 additional pieces. Would you go back 2 slides?
Structure pieces.
Yes. So if you look at the bottom row middle, that is the little area where the slide is. Most of those pieces were natural, just tree logs that were laid on their side or stood up. Most of those have rotted away. Yes. So we're going to be removing those. We think we can do that in-house. And then we'll come back with the pour in place and then some new permanent structures that don't get eaten up by the weather.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much it. It's due on Monday. We're almost there.
I like the project. I do want to say, and I've heard this from Parks and Rec Advisory Board members, and it's my opinion as well, that where we can, I I really admire the natural features in parks and utilization of a downed log, 20, 30 inches in diameter from that site maybe, or from an adjacent site as a play structure. I think that's terrific. I like to see more of it. And yeah, we know they're going to decompose, and that's okay. So,
Here, we were looking to replace the existing natural structures with artificial that look the same, but won't decay over time. If, Robeson Walk may be a good opportunity for more natural play areas, because we're hoping that park will be more of a passive, natural focused park with that creek. Certainly, still working with the Haley Group to get that land dedicated. I would hope to have that in front of you in April, maybe May, so we can get started on that master plan.
great.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
And I just want to tout staff for a little bit. I sent this over to Jonathan, like, let's keep this in mind for next year. And he said, let's get it done. You got it done in 2 weeks with all the staff. So.
Yeah, they've done all the work and yelled at me along the way. So it's been fun. But the other part is we don't know where grant money is going to be, considering where the state and federal government are leaning. So
Yeah, jump on it.
jump on it while it's there, or it
Absolutely.
may not be there next year. So
Absolutely.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, I'll take a motion to approve staff to apply for park accessibility grant and authorize the mayor to sign the certification.
So moved.
Second,
Right. Mayor Pro Tem Baldwin, second.
not going to arm wrestle.
Lance.
Motion.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. And I will have a motion to adjourn.
And so moved.
Mr. Bonds, second. Mr. Farrell. Commissioner Bose. All in favor?